and it's a little chilly for a spring day.
In the morning, but we are headed for 70s for like a week and a half straight here. Get rid of this winter weather in the morning and move on to 70 degrees.
You know, this is my year. I'm going to plant tomatoes that live.
This is my year. I'm going to plant tomatoes that deer eat once again for the 20th straight year. Also, Jefferson County Prosecuting Attorney Matthew Harvey with absolutely no, and I mean no, criminal jurisdiction during this show. Good morning, sir.
One of these days I might surprise you. I might somehow figure out a way to get jurisdiction.
Cuff Gilstrap a couple times, you know, lead him out of here.
Somehow
It's not that kind of show.
Annex this little island here.
Yeah.
That WRNR is on.
It could happen. Like a Berlin airlift kind of situation.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Sure.
Years later. Our guest to lead off the program today is Senator Amy Grady. She is the Senate Education Chair out of Mason County. Good morning, Amy. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Good morning, guys. It's nice to be with you.
Before we get into education stuff, I understand that you folks also will be getting a data center in Mason County. And I don't know how much, obviously, your focus during the legislature is on education issues. But as this is coming to your home county, I suspect that you've read up on this a little bit.
That's the plan. It's actually been, in the works or in the talks for about a year in Mason County. So it's a prime location, and so we've been looking forward to that for a little while. This bill that we passed this year will help make sure that they secure everything they need to move forward. So it's very helpful.
All right, very good. Let's get into some of the education items that were passed during this school year. Yesterday, we spoke with the Board of Education President Jackie Long and Vice President Melissa Power about the discipline bill and some clarifications there. Can you go into that a little bit? I know that this was a big part of some of the things you were working towards.
Absolutely, Rob. So a couple of years ago, we passed a discipline bill for middle school through high school students to allow teachers to have a little more say in removing a student from their classroom. But that was focused a lot on just basically being a distraction as older kids understand completely what they're supposed to do in class and sometimes make choices they shouldn't. This one focuses on K-6 when sixth grade is in an elementary setting. We do still have some counties that have sixth graders in elementary schools. And it focuses on students who are violent, intimidating, or threatening. So they're exhibiting behaviors that create an unsafe learning space in the classroom. And a couple of years ago, I worked on this bill last year. I think we talked about it actually on your show. And teachers that was their number one concern was, we'd like to see something dealing with classroom discipline. We feel like our hands are tied. We feel like we can't do anything when we have a student who is out of control. And they're spending a lot of their time focusing on one student rather than the rest of the class. And so this bill is aimed to make sure two things, that it creates a safe learning space for the students in the classroom, but it also provides some supports for the child who is exhibiting these behaviors. Because let's face it, these are 5 to 12-year-olds, and they need more than one chance, because these are little kids. And so I think the bill accomplishes both of those things.
Take us through the disciplinary process for this student that is so disruptive that the child needs to be removed from the classroom.
So the first thing that would happen is they would be placed on a behavioral intervention support plan for 2 weeks. So if they exhibit this behavior for the first time, the administrator, school counselor, social worker, teacher, parents, if so, will get involved in creating a plan for this child to improve the behavior. If after 2 weeks there is no change in the behavior, that behavior plan will be changed once more. Another 2 weeks will be given, and if the behavior doesn't change then the child is removed from the classroom and removed from the school setting, placed in an alternative learning environment, whether that be an alternative learning center, whether that be on homebound, whether that be something the county offers or their shared services amongst counties, or if that's a behavioral health center within the community. So we're trying to provide supports for these kids to make sure that they have what they need and to help them to re-enter back into the school system with a behavior plan in place to hopefully improve the behaviors. So, it's something that is tailored, I think, to the individual student and, more importantly, of what their behaviors are and how we can help them to fix it. One of the main concerns, Rob, with it was we've got a lot of kids in foster care. And so they jump a lot of schools to no fault of their own. And you never know what kind of behaviors that might create from children based on that they've had trauma in their lives. And you also, something in that school may trigger a trauma response. And you don't want to kick that child out of school for that. You want to try to see how we can help them. And I think we have a pretty good plan. It's a good start. Is it perfect? No. We need more alternative learning centers. We need funding for it. But it's a really good start that I think that if schools really want to make a difference, they'll really put their best effort forward in it.
We have the CARES Academy here in Berkeley County run by Dr. Tyler Long. Do most counties have something similar, or do most counties have some type of alternative option for children who can't remain in the classroom because of disciplinary issues?
We have about 15 counties that have some sort of program available in their county for a child to go to. Senator Rucker and I worked on a bill this year that will create alternative learning or alternative high-risk student population charter schools for the state, which would allow schools like this to come in to focus on children who exhibit these kinds of behaviors and helping them to work through it and then, get back into the public school system if that's what their parents choose for them to do. So we're trying to work on a lot of different options, thinking outside of the box, thinking of how we can create these types of environments for kids so they can learn how to control this behavior instead of us just ignoring it or spending 7 hours a day focused on one child rather than teaching. Our education system is low, and the reason it's low is because we have a lot of these things that our teachers are focusing on instead of actually teaching the rest of the class, and we have to stop that.
Before I bring John and Matt in for questions, I'm going to go to another subject, and then they can circle back and take some questions, bring some questions to you from those two subjects or anything else for that matter. Senator Grady, let's talk about the state gaining oversight of the Board of Education. You were critical of this at one point because you felt it went against the voters' will.
I did, yes. I pushed for that amendment when it was on the ballot, Rob. I wholeheartedly believed in it. I tried to educate as many people as I could about why it's important that there's some oversight from elected officials because the Board of Education is a separate branch of government pretty much. But when we had these two bills this year, I felt like we dropped the ball on that. We didn't do our best at educating the voters on those amendments. We had 4 amendments on the ballot. That was a lot. They were a lot of legalese, like the wording was terrible. And so I think we dropped the ball on that. Voters voted it down. I don't think we should circumvent what they did with a bill and say we're going to pass this anyway, even though we know it's going to go into the court system and it's going to be challenged. I think that sends the wrong message to them. I think what we need to do is put it on the ballot by itself, word it so that people can understand exactly what they're voting on, do our part in educating the public on why it's important, and then I bet it would pass. I just didn't think it was a good idea for us to run a bill to say we think you got it wrong and we're going to do this anyway. I just think it sent the wrong message and I wasn't comfortable with it.
Do you feel that this law is constitutional and would stand up to a challenge?
I really don't know. I'm hearing that it possibly could stand up to a challenge based on how our Supreme Court is made up now, but I didn't want to take that chance. I don't know. I don't like passing bills wondering if there's going to be a challenge and then wondering if it's going to hold up or not. I don't think that's good practice, and I'm not criticizing anybody who voted for the bill or who thinks that that's a good chance to take. We just have a different philosophy on that.
John Gilstrap.
Good morning, Senator. I want to go back to the discipline bill. The phrase violent, intimidating, or threatening. If we take this to the first or second grade level, if little Robbie takes little Johnny's crayon and little Johnny pushes Robbie, and then Robbie pushes me back, have we just had a violent and intimidating episode that then triggers a behavioral intervention support plan?
No, sir. And we've heard a lot of those examples. Kids sometimes will use language as well. Let's say the same thing happened. Little Robbie took your crayon and you said, I'm going to kill you. Just in matter of factly, some kids say that in a manner of not really truly meaning they're going to kill them, but meaning that I'm mad at you and I'm going to do something about it. I think, we have to use our common sense when you're talking about little kids. You have to intervene, and a lot of times intervening, it doesn't mean you're sending them to a behavioral support center or you're giving them a behavior support plan. Sometimes just sitting down and having a conversation and explaining what kinds of behaviors are expected and what aren't is what we need to do. And teachers do that on a daily basis. And that would not be considered violent or threatening. That's just a disagreement amongst 6 or 7-year-olds, And so that's something that happens on a daily basis, and it has to change. That has to just involve a lot of discussion and communication amongst each other. The kind of violence that you're looking at is a child, and you guys, I don't know, you may not believe it so much. A lot of people don't, but we have 5-year-olds who are throwing chairs across the room, taking pencils and trying to stab their teacher. We have 5- and 6-year-olds who have broken windows with things because they were so angry. Those are the kind of things that are violent, intimidating, or threatening. Whenever it creates a space for the teacher to know that the learning environment is unsafe, and also other students feel like they're not in a safe space, that's the big problem. It's not these little small quarrels between kids. It's not even arguments or even fights between kids. We already have a policy that deals with students fighting each other. And so the difference is if there's somebody intending to create harm and disturb the learning environment. That's the big difference.
And are these things defined within the bill, or is it subjective left to the teacher?
There are some definitions for violent, and there's definitions for threatening, and there are definitions for intimidating. To make sure that it doesn't leave it completely open, but you also, one of the best things teachers have is their discretion, much like with police officers. You have to use your discretion when you're dealing with children in all manners. And so it doesn't take away the discretion of the teacher. It also pulls in the discretion of the administrator as well. And, there's honestly no way to take that out. And I really wouldn't want to because, like I said, our discretion is often one of our best tools.
Is there a zero tolerance element to this?
You mean as if they do this and they're gone completely?
No, as if you can't look the other way. That was just a scuffle. Yeah, okay, they hit each other. It's done. Let's just move on.
But if it happens again and again, then that's an issue. That's an issue that needs to be addressed. One time might be a scuffle. Twice, you may need to start addressing that with a behavior plan. One thing that we heard, John, was that a lot of times, and this was prior to the bill, teachers would feel that they were using their discretion and they were looking and saying, hey, this is a problem. This is something that's happening all the time. I feel threatened. My students feel threatened, sending the child out to the principal, and then 30 minutes later they come back. And so they were really frustrated over that because they felt like they were truly trying to help the child. They're trying to help the students in their classroom, and their administrator is sending them back to the classroom for a number of reasons. Maybe that principal has a lot of things going on that day, don't have time for that. They don't have a place to put the student. And they said that they were frustrated over that because they felt like they were turning their head and looking another way, the principal was. And this gives the teachers more discretion and more of a say in how their classroom is ran. And so I think that's the most important part of it, is that their voice is heard.
Senator Grady.
Matt Harvey there.
Oh, yes. Good morning, Senator Grady.
Hi, Matt.
So, and I know you covered this, but once the student has been disciplined and removed from the classroom, what happens to the counties that do not have as many resources as others and places for the children to go?
We added in the bill that they could utilize community behavioral support centers as well. So any kind of community-based behavioral support center. Every county has school psychologists, school counselors, okay. And so the child if a county doesn't have a place for the child to go, they have a couple of options. They can talk with those community behavioral support centers to help supports for that family and for the child. Number one, while the child is out, they're either on homebound instruction, which is every county has, and you have a homebound teacher who either goes to the home to teach them or meets them at a public library or may meet them at the school after school hours to teach them. And also we have the virtual option. And I know neither one of those two options are perfect, but we have to do something to remove these students from the classroom because our focus needs to be on the 19 students that come there to learn and not the one student who's causing all the disruptions. And I think if you put it in the hands of the parents or the guardians and say, if they can't behave and be in schools, then you're going to have to find them an alternative learning environment. I mean, whether that's a virtual school and they're at home, or the homebound, and the teacher comes there, or they have to take them somewhere. I think sometimes we have to put the responsibility on the parents to show them how big of an issue it is, and hopefully they'll help in supporting that child's behavior to turn around.
Do you think, and just to remind everybody, you are an actual school teacher, and
yes,
besides a senator, and I guess I'm just want to hear about your experience as kids today are receiving information differently than when I was a student, and with the internet and social media and YouTube. Is that causing issues in the classroom as well, and the ability of children, how they receive and uptake information?
Matt, I really, truly think so. I've been a fourth grade teacher for 17 years, and over the course of my 17 years, I have seen such a change in just the behavior of students, but also their personal responsibilities. And so prior to, like back in the early days of my teaching career, I felt like kids were more responsible. They were more well-rounded, like with different abilities. And kids nowadays, that's all. When you ask them to share something they did over the weekend or something they did in the evening, that's all they do. They're on their tablets, they're on their phones, they're on their video games. The only stories I hear a lot of times revolve around playing video games with their friends. And so, we have this technology push in schools, which, technology is an important part of our lives nowadays, but these elementary school age kids and, middle school and high school, but mostly elementary school kids that I think need to learn through play, go outside and play and learn and run and exert that energy. They go home from the school day and they're almost on their tablets or video games all evening until they go to bed at night. And some of them, even after their parents go to bed, they're still up late doing the same thing. And then we come to school and we want them to use technology as well. And it's an overload for their brains. And I think that it truly does affect their behaviors. I have 3 kids at home, and I limit screen time as much as I possibly can. But if there are days where my children, even my 17-year-old son, is on their technology, their gaming systems or their phones or their tablets a little longer than usual, I can see a difference in their behaviors and I can see a difference in their moods. And so I know that those things affect kids, and I think if we get control of that. So, the Governor Morsi had a bill this year we passed that'll take cell phones out of the classroom. And I think that we're going to see a big difference in how our kids maybe interact with each other because of that.
They may go through withdrawals at the beginning.
Well, I was watching a news story the other day that was interviewing some high school students from another state who have had this cell phone ban implemented for about a year now. And they were speaking very positively about it. They said they didn't feel as much pressure to check their phones, that they were missing something. They said they interacted with their peers more and it improved their relationships. And so I'm hoping that that's not like a positive that's spread around and that wasn't just, one small case. But I think that it could have a good positive effect on our youth, considering the fact that they're on those devices all evening, and they don't get a break from them, and their brains don't get a break. So, yeah, I do think it changes their behaviors, and I do think it affects the way they learn and the way they think.
Well, and I know that it's only 7 to 8 hours a day that kids are at school, so that could become like a internet safe haven for them. But it also begs the question: do we have to restructure the way education is provided to children and get away from the solely traditional classroom setting?
I would love for us to be able to do that. I think there's some benefits to having a traditional classroom setting, but I think there are a lot of benefits to allowing flexibility for students to learn in different ways. And so, the more traditional way that we thought of, probably, I don't know how old you are, Matt, but when I was a kid and, you're sitting in rows in your classrooms and you're in your desks and you're doing, everybody's doing the same thing. Now the classrooms are much different. We have multiple groups of kids sitting in different areas of the classroom, and a lot of times those groups are all doing different activities based on what they need at that time. And so the management of the classroom is different, and I think the traditional structure of the classroom is a lot different now than it was then, because we're trying to give those kids those different experiences and to differentiate their learning so that every child's getting what they need. But we still, I think, expanding it could be even more. Get outside of the 4 walls and expand it past the brick and mortar.
Senator Amy Grady, our guest here on the program. She is the state Senate Education Chair. We have about 4 minutes left. Are there some other bills you want to make sure people know about that got passed this year regarding education, Amy?
Absolutely, Rob. We had a school security mapping bill that passed this year, and we funded it. And I'm really excited about it because I think it can make a big difference in providing security for our schools. Every single school in the state would be provided the funds to have these maps done, 3D maps, imaged maps for first responders and police officers to respond to an emergency. And so it's a really amazing technology, and we want to make sure that every school has it because our first responders, if there's an emergency at our schools, no matter what that would be, they need to know where they're going, exactly where they need to be. Gives them the opportunity to lock down certain areas of school that are safe and keep other parts open. And so, I think that's one of the most important bills that we passed this year. Along with, we also passed a bill that allows for counties to contract with security personnel, whether that be retired law enforcement officers, whether that be a private security firm. And I think that can make a big difference too. We've been fortunate so far in West Virginia that we haven't had any school shootings or any kind of situations like that other states have seen. And I'm very thankful for that. But I think we need to make sure we're proactive to make sure that those things don't happen and we're ready for anything instead of sitting back and thinking that it's not going to happen here.
Anything else that you passed that you wanted to bring to our attention?
We passed quite a few things that I could talk about. We only have 4 minutes, Rob, so
Yes.
I don't have a lot of time.
Well, I saw you got one sign for financial literacy in the classroom,
Yes.
and that's a big one in West Virginia because West Virginia ranks 14th lowest in financial literacy in the country.
We passed that one last year. We just made some changes to it this year. So we lowered it down to 8th graders could also take that, and then we moved it. It used to be, it was just like 11th and 12th grade, and they were having some trouble with scheduling, so we widened it a little so that they could take it throughout a course of a number of years. Financial literacy, and then we passed a bill also for a computer science credit that's required to graduate because, we've got to make sure that our kids are ready for the workforce when they come out. And we have a lot of businesses coming in West Virginia that say that having a computer science background is really important when they look to hire somebody. So we added that in as well. The governor's going to sign that bill this week. And so it would take the place of a math class if a child decided they wanted to choose that. I said child, and I'm talking about high schoolers, but that's where my mind goes.
Mm-hmm.
But if they would decide that they would want to do that, they could take that in the place of a math class. Some students, they don't need a calculus class. They don't need a trig class. If they know what they're doing when they go out from high school, a computer science class could be something that goes towards their future career. And so that's another thing that I think can really help propel our students. So those are two bills that I think are really important as well.
60 seconds, John. You have a quick one.
Real quick, when you say financial literacy, does this mean the harm you can do by having too much debt and how to balance your checkbook, that sort of thing?
Yes, that's part of it. Yes.
All right, good stuff.
Yeah.
Senator Grady, thank you so much. We appreciate your time as always.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys. Y'all have a good day.
You too.